Have you ever wondered why some people seem completely unbothered no matter how chaotic the world around them gets? Why do some individuals seem to gain respect and influence not by raising their voice but by saying nothing at all? Could it be that real power isn't found in what we say but in what we choose not to? If you're seeking a life of emotional mastery, personal control, and quiet dominance in a world full of noise, then this message is for you. Make sure to subscribe, because we explore the path of self-mastery, strategic thinking, and stoic strength every week. Now let's dive deep into the timeless art of silence. 1. Silence, the strategy that speaks volumes. Silence is more than golden. It's strategic. When you stop rushing to fill every pause with words, you begin to understand how powerful silence really is. In a world where noise dominates, social, media rants, endless debates, and impulsive replies, silence becomes a radical act. It's not about withholding for the sake of being mysterious. It's about creating space for clarity, space for thought, space for your opponent or counterpart to reveal more than they intended. In meetings, relationships, or even confrontations, the silent person is often perceived as more thoughtful, more dominant, and more in control. Why? Because they're not broadcasting insecurity or a need for validation. They're choosing to speak only when their words carry weight. Most people are uncomfortable with silence. They fill it with nervous chatter or emotional outbursts. But the person who holds their tongue holds the upper hand. This discomfort others feel in silence is revealing. It exposes their anxiety, their desire for approval, their compulsion to be liked or understood instantly. A person who doesn't rush to speak forces others to deal with their own inner noise. This is where real influence begins, not with what you say, but with what you don't. When you sit in silence while others argue or ramble, you remain immune to manipulation and distraction. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting others back to themselves, forcing them to hear their own contradictions, justifications, or exaggerations. That's how silence subtly asserts dominance. When you remain quiet in moments where people expect you to react, they start revealing their own intentions. They fumble, they project, they panic. The person who expects a confrontation and gets calm silence instead is thrown off balance. They expected heat, but got cool observation. And in their scramble to fill the void, they often confess more than they meant to. This isn't about being passive. It's about giving people enough rope to reveal their character. They talk themselves into corners. They contradict themselves. They expose not just what they want from you, but what they fear. In the courtroom, in negotiation, or in the intimacy of an argument, silence isn't emptiness. It's a stage upon which others unknowingly perform. Stoic silence creates discomfort in manipulators and peace in the one who practices it. Because silence doesn't mean you're passive, it means you're watching, listening, and calculating. The Stoic understands that every word you utter can be a contract. Once spoken, your words can be twisted, misunderstood, or used against you. But silence? It's invulnerable. You're not committing to anything. You're not revealing strategy. You're not playing into traps. Silence allows you to conserve energy, protect your dignity, and observe without distortion. When your inner world is calm, your outer silence becomes an extension of that serenity. You no longer feel the need to explain yourself, to justify, or to argue. You realize that most things don't require a reaction. They require awareness. And that's where power lives. 2. The strength of non-reaction. Reactivity is weakness dressed as urgency. Every time you react without thought, you hand over control of your emotions. This doesn't just apply to anger or confrontation. It applies to praise, guilt, panic, and even flattery. Reaction is immediate, unfiltered, and often regrettable. It's the part of you that hasn't been trained to pause. Think of reactivity as an open gate. Anyone can walk in and manipulate you, provoke you, or shape your behavior. Stoicism teaches that reaction is not strength. It's vulnerability disguised as action. The truly strong person doesn't need to clap back or explode. They endure the sting, analyze the situation, and respond only if necessary, and always with intention. But the Stoic learns the art of the pause, a deep breath, a delay, a decision. In that tiny space between stimulus and response lies your entire capacity for self-mastery. Pausing doesn't mean avoiding, it means clarifying. When someone says something inflammatory, the Stoic doesn't take the bait. They breathe. They allow the wave of emotion to pass without attaching to it. Then they ask, is this worth my energy? What is this person's goal? Is silence more strategic than a response? This pause is not paralysis. It's the preparation for poised, powerful action. Even in high-stress environments, the one who can delay reaction is often the one who leads. When someone tries to provoke you, they're baiting your emotion. And if you bite, they own the moment. But if you remain composed, they lose their grip. The louder they get, the quieter you become. The more erratic they behave, the more anchored you stay. That contrast reveals who's truly in control. Their tactic becomes their weakness. They may mock your stillness, interpret it as cold or aloof, but it's not your job to comfort their discomfort. You're not required to make them feel better for failing to control you. Your non-reaction isn't apathy, it's discipline. You've seen the trap, and you've chosen not to walk into it. Non-reaction isn't suppression, it's strategy. You observe, analyze, and then act, not from impulse, but from strength. It's not about becoming numb. It's about becoming selective. You respond when it serves your integrity, your mission, your peace, not your pride. In truth, non-reaction is a form of power conservation. You're not wasting energy on battles that don't build you. You're not burning bridges that don't need to be crossed. And with time, you learn that many provocations solve themselves when met with silence or stillness. You become unshakable not because life gets easier, but because you've stopped outsourcing your mood to the chaos around you. You've reclaimed your inner authority. 3. Pattern recognition, outsmart through observation. Most people are predictable. They repeat habits. They expose insecurities. They follow emotional routines. They think they're being clever or guarded, but the truth is, their behavior is often cyclical. People show you who they are long before they say it. They repeat patterns in relationships, work, and arguments. They default to the same excuses, the same coping mechanisms, the same overreactions. The Stoic doesn't need to confront these patterns aggressively. They simply need to watch. Because if you're observing carefully, what feels like complexity becomes obvious. You see the loops, you see the motives beneath the performance. And once you recognize these loops, you're no longer surprised or destabilized by them. The Stoic becomes a student of behavior. They watch how people move, how they speak, when they flinch, when they boast. You learn to read body language, tone changes, silence, avoidance, and exaggeration. You notice when someone's laugh is too loud, when their eye contact is evasive, when their charm feels rehearsed. These are all tells, subconscious cues that reveal inner stories. You don't need to ask invasive questions or play detective. The answers are always present for those who are willing to watch without assumption. Observation requires patience and neutrality. You're not trying to prove something, you're just collecting data, quietly, calmly, consistently. When you observe patterns, how someone reacts when questioned, how they avoid eye contact, how they overcompensate, you learn more than their words could ever reveal. Words can lie. But patterns tell the truth. Does this person always shift blame? Do they use guilt to control others? Do they disappear when accountability is required? These questions get answered not by interrogation but by observation. And the moment you see someone's pattern, you're no longer caught off guard by their behavior. You stop expecting them to change. You stop personalizing their dysfunction. And that detachment is powerful. It frees you from confusion, frustration, and false hope. And with that knowledge, you don't confront, you outmaneuver. Not through manipulation, but through insight. When you know someone's pattern, you don't waste energy on futile conversations or trying to fix them. You adapt your response. You sidestep emotional traps. You don't push, they reveal. This isn't about superiority, it's about wisdom. You've chosen to see clearly instead of emotionally. And when others are blinded by drama or distraction, you remain anchored in understanding. This is the essence of Stoic intelligence, not reacting to what people say, but responding based on what they consistently do. And that shift from guessing to knowing is the foundation of true discernment. 4. Emotional intelligence, your inner shield. Emotional intelligence is not just about understanding others, it's about mastering yourself. Too often, the phrase emotional intelligence gets diluted into the notion of simply being empathetic or socially adept. But at its core, it is far more personal, even solitary. True emotional intelligence begins with self-awareness, a quiet, ongoing audit of your inner life. You learn to name your emotions without judgment. You learn to sit with discomfort without reacting impulsively. This self-mastery doesn't numb you, it sharpens you. It gives you clarity in chaos and discipline in disorder. When you're emotionally intelligent, you don't become a prisoner of fleeting moods. You don't drown in anxiety or rage because you've trained yourself to observe them like waves that rise and pass. Your awareness creates distance, and that distance gives you choice. You're no longer yanked around by the storms inside or the noise outside. You choose your response, and in that choice lies your strength. When you know your emotional triggers, you stop letting others push them. You disarm the manipulator before they can strike. Knowing your triggers isn't a weakness, it's your armor. It's the difference between walking into a trap and sidestepping it with poise. Manipulators thrive on unconscious reactions. They bait you with shame, guilt, flattery, or fear, hoping you'll flinch, explode, or yield. But when you've done the work of emotional introspection, those buttons they used to push go dead, their tactics fall flat. You no longer dance to their tune because you've cut the strings they once pulled. This isn't about being cold or detached. It's about being deliberate. You don't allow someone to hijack your nervous system or co-opt your sense of reality. You don't get lured into every argument or provoked by every slight. Emotional intelligence makes you a poor target for manipulation because you're rooted, not reactive. You know what's yours to carry and what's not. A Stoic doesn't deny emotion, they channel it. They feel deeply but respond selectively. The Stoic ideal is not a deadened heart. It's a disciplined one. Anger, sadness, joy, grief, these are part of the human experience, and the Stoic doesn't suppress them. They study them. When anger arises, they observe it, trace it, understand it, and then they ask, is this useful? Is this in my control? If not, they release it like exhaling a breath. Emotion, in the Stoic mind, is energy, and like all energy, it can be directed, contained, transformed. The undisciplined mind lets emotion erupt like a wildfire. The trained mind harnesses it like a blacksmith forges steel. It's not about suppressing your nature. It's about sculpting it into something purposeful. You don't lash out, you respond with intention. You don't bottle up pain, you examine it, learn from it, and grow. That's what makes Stoic emotional intelligence so potent. It doesn't deny humanity, it refines it. The calm exterior is not an act. It's the result of internal work. When you're emotionally stable, no insult can shake you, and no chaos can break your peace. Calmness is not a facade, It's the visible result of invisible labor. It's built from journaling your thoughts, confronting your ego, sitting in silence, enduring uncomfortable truths, and choosing discipline over drama. That unshakable calm is not genetic, it's earned. It means you've faced your own shadows and no longer fear the dark in others. When someone insults you, you recognize it as a projection, not a personal wound. When the world panics, you don't lose your center. You breathe, observe, and act deliberately. The emotionally intelligent person doesn't need to raise their voice to be heard, doesn't need to dominate to feel strong, and doesn't need validation to feel secure. Their power lies in restraint, their peace in understanding, and their dignity in self-command. They become immovable, not because they don't feel, but because they've trained their soul to stand still in fire. 5. Strategic withdrawal and redirection. Sometimes the most powerful move is to walk away, not from weakness, but from wisdom. There's a mistaken belief that walking away is surrender, that if you don't argue, you've lost, that if you don't fight, you're afraid. But true strength often wears the mask of silence. It's easy to react. It takes nothing to throw a punch, verbally or emotionally. What takes strength is choosing not to. What takes courage is walking away when your pride is begging you to stay and prove something. But the Stoic doesn't serve pride, they serve clarity. They understand that most battles are invitations to self-destruction. The louder someone demands your attention, the more vital it is to pause, to ask, is this worth my energy? Is this worthy of my time? The answer is often no. So you walk, not because you're weak, but because you refuse to burn your peace on the altar of someone else's chaos. Strategic withdrawal is wisdom in motion. Strategic withdrawal means knowing when to disengage, when to let silence speak, when to prioritize peace over proving a point. There are conversations that go nowhere, arguments that become circles, and people who feed off your reaction like leeches. Knowing when to exit these dynamics isn't avoidance, it's self-respect. Silence isn't passivity, it's a message. When someone rages and you remain still, that stillness echoes louder than any rebuttal. It throws their chaos back at them. It forces them to face themselves without the distraction of your defense. The Stoic doesn't indulge every conflict. They assess, calculate, and choose the path of least emotional erosion. Withdrawal isn't giving up. It's redirecting your energy where it can actually grow something. Peace, clarity, purpose. You don't plant seeds in barren soil, and you don't pour effort into relationships or battles that feed on destruction. And then there's redirection, the Stoic tactic of absorbing energy and turning it around, not with force, but with grace. When conflict arises, the untrained mind fights back with equal intensity. The Stoic mind absorbs, redirects, transforms. Like a martial artist using an opponent's momentum against them, the Stoic doesn't resist directly. They reposition the interaction. An insult becomes a mirror reflecting the speaker's character. A power play becomes a lesson in detachment. You don't get pulled into the mud. You turn the situation into fuel for your own elevation. Redirection is an act of inner alchemy. You take the lead others throw at you and turn it into gold. You learn, you adapt, you rise. It's not passive, it's intentional, it's strength under control. The Stoic doesn't just escape chaos, they transmute it into clarity. Instead of clashing with toxic behavior, you let it collapse under its own weight. You stay still while others burn themselves out. One of the most effective responses to dysfunction is non-participation. When you stop feeding a fire, it dies. When you stop reacting to provocation, the provocateur loses power. You don't confront every lie, counter every slight, or chase every apology. You stay grounded, knowing that truth doesn't need a megaphone, it endures. And while others spiral, You conserve energy, protect your mind, and move forward. Toxicity thrives on engagement. When you offer none, it becomes a shadow swinging at air. The Stoic lets others destroy themselves with their own momentum, not out of cruelty, but out of wisdom. Not to win, but to preserve what matters, their peace, their purpose, their path. This is not escape. This is power refined, power that doesn't need to shout to be felt. True power isn't loud. It doesn't flinch, doesn't boast, doesn't beg. It simply is. A refined strength is invisible to those looking for brute force. It's in the still eyes that see through the storm, in the breath that steadies before the blow, in the presence that calms a room without a word. That's the Stoic ideal, not the warrior who charges, but the one who watches, chooses, and strikes only when necessary. Strategic withdrawal and graceful redirection aren't cowardice. They are the highest expressions of control. And in that control, you find a freedom most never taste. The freedom to not be ruled by what's outside of you. The freedom to be unshaken. Life will test you. People will provoke you. The world will try to shake you. But silence is your sword. Non-reaction is your armor. And emotional intelligence is your compass. Master these, and you won't just survive chaos, you'll rise above it. You won't have to prove your power. It will be felt in your presence, in your peace, in your silence. If this resonated with you, subscribe and join the journey of self-mastery. The world doesn't need louder voices. It needs stronger minds.